All right, everyone. Happy Friday and welcome to the LDV podcast. I am alone this week. My wonderful co-host Kelly Perkins is out having adventures. Good for her, and being safe. Double good for her. So instead of the normal banter, let's bring in our guest. Today we have Jonathan Sass from Vyopta. John, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Great. And I chatted with you recently doing the analyst thing, getting caught up on what's going on, and I'm like, I think other people would like to know some of what's going on because I find it interesting. And well, let's get into it. Let's bring you a little bit closer here. Let's get a little bit more comfortable. Now, this is for those who don't know Vyopta. This is when I think of Vyopta. This is kind of what a big part of what I think of, the traditional business setup, the big boardroom stuff, the expensive equipment, and getting analytics on that so we know exactly what that's doing. So let me stop talking for a minute. And Jonathan, let me give you a chance to introduce yourself to our audience and explain a little bit about what Vyopta does for those who have no idea.
Absolutely. And I feel with this background, I must need to put like a sport jacket on or something, just to fit the room.
It's Friday.
It is. I guess we can keep things a bit casual. Thanks for having me on, David. I'm Jonathan Sass. I'm the Vice President of Product Management at Vyopta. I've spent my entire career really focused on IT. Actually started off as a practitioner managing infrastructure, video and voice. And then over the course of my career, I've spent the last decade or so really focused on product management and building products that simplify IT. And that's led me to Vyopta. And so Vyopta, we're focused on simplifying collaboration, making it work, making it better for everyone who uses that technology, which today is almost everyone in the world. We think about just working from home, working in the conference room, collaboration technology has become a key piece of our workday. I think many of us would say we spend probably the majority of our workday in meetings, talking to other people, whether that's using Zoom, Teams, WebEx, or on the phone. All of that technology needs to be supported, and that's where Vyopta comes in. We offer a platform called Collaboration Intelligence, which focuses on helping organizations manage and monitor all of that technology to maximize their return on investment.
Now, let me play a little bit of a devil's advocate, give you a little bit of a hard time here. I love what you said about the role is to help us use our UC equipment better, make our UC experience better for our workers who are, especially now, living on UC, living on video. Now, isn't the reality that what we really do is we have people who spent a lot of money on this video equipment and they need to validate it and they need data to say, look, boss, people are using it. And they bring in Vyopta and you guys do the reports and say, we're using it for 1,000 minutes a month, and say, see, we did good. Or is it just validating the spend, or how does it actually help us use this stuff better? How does it make it better as opposed to just saying, yes, we're using it?
Absolutely. So, but by the way, we absolutely can help companies, IT departments do that validation along the lines of looking at the return on their investment. So it's absolutely something we can help. But our primary focus is really on how do we help the end users have that ideal experience. So what we're looking at is quality of experience. We have our own proprietary algorithm that looks at the quality of experience of each individual meeting. And then we're able to alert on that, monitor on that. So the individuals who are responsible for supporting that, whether that's level 1, level 2, help desk technicians, UC engineers, architects, they're able to quickly respond to issues, whether that's with a single VIP user, someone working from home, or something more systematic, maybe an entire building's having a quality issue. They can quickly be notified of that issue, have the data on their fingertips to dig in and resolve that, so that ultimately that technology works. I like to say it's a lot of, video conferencing today is becoming a lot like, your telephone. When you pick up your telephone, you expect to hear a dial tone. When you're having a video conferencing call, you expect that to work. You expect it to be a high quality experience, and software solutions like Vyopta are helping the teams that manage that do that, which then enable everyone that uses that technology to have a great experience. And maybe taking a little bit of a tangent on that, I think we think about it a lot in the lens of corporate enterprise, how corporations work. But a lot of our clients are in telemedicine, education, other verticals. And if you think about today, particularly with telemedicine, for example, the quality of an interaction is so important for both the patient and the doctor. we have clients that are using video conferencing, using telemedicine to diagnose things like strokes, to do dermatology. And so having a high quality experience is really, really critical in those situations. And so it's not just about helping, corporations, enterprises maximize, maximize the experience that they can provide their employees and customers. It's also helping with, telemedicine education, ensuring that many of the things that we've had to change in the last year, we can continue to optimize the experience there as well.
Now, a lot of times, quality it's subjective. It's based on expectations, and I think a good thing for video is expectations are pretty low. I think people, because video has kind of been poor for a long, long time. Video is a hard technology to get going, and for everything with UC, but video is always a good example. And I think a lot of people who have first started using video did their first telemedicine visit this year. Their expectations were really low, like, oh, I can't go to the doctor. Well, I'll see my doctor on video, and it's going to be bad. And it turned out to be pretty good. So when we're helping people with quality, are we just dealing with their complaints? Because I would think we're not going to get a lot of complaints unless we have failed calls. Or are we? Is it the kind of thing we're able to see if there's a problem before the people know there's a problem? Like if there's a low quality call that no one would really complain about, but at the end of the hour, my eyes are tired because I'm straining to see because it's been a little blurry and I just didn't notice it. Or my ears are tired because the audio quality was a little staticky and I'm trying to make out what people are saying. No one's going to complain about that stuff, but wow, it really affects productivity. So is that something Vyopta can help with?
Absolutely. So we're going to focus on proactively identifying that before, tickets ever submitted, an end user ever complains about the quality of the system. So, we're looking at, network data. We're looking at data around the endpoint, and that could be in a conference room or at home with your laptop to see what that quality of experience is. And so even though, so that IT immediately knows when that issue is happening. In fact, around 90% of all issues go unreported when it comes to, issues with, video and voice collaboration. And so that's why it's so important to have a platform in place to identify those early on, because a lot of them can be proactively resolved before they're affecting not only just one user, but an entire group of users or a key VIP or an important meeting within the organization. So having this proactive analytics is really important. In fact, we helped organizations last year identify over 9 million bad call experiences so that they can go and resolve those using the Vyopta tool. Whether that's an issue, and the issues can vary pretty widely. One of the common ones is CPU on the laptop is insufficient, and they've got a digital background, and it's causing other performance issues for the meeting. At the same time, it could be something that is networking related. It's affecting an entire building, or it could be related to maybe the ISP that you're working with, or the actual platform. If you're using a UCaaS platform, maybe there's a node that's having some providing a poor experience, and then you have the data you need to open up that ticket with that particular vendor. And so we're providing all of those insights so that it is actionable for our customers to resolve those issues, so that they can exceed the expectations of everybody that's using that technology. Because the expectations, at the beginning of the pandemic, I would agree with you. It was like, wow, this is working. Let's celebrate the fact that we can do this. I mean, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, this wouldn't have been a possibility. But now, as this is becoming part of the new normal of how people are working, those expectations are very quickly increasing that, it's not just okay to have the call and be able to connect. It actually has to be a good experience along those lines as people do critical business. Think about lawyers as they take depositions, or if you think about, was like Hollywood's a fun one. If you think about, agents in Hollywood, they're doing demo reels, over video conferencing right now. That has to work. And so it's become such an intricate part to so many businesses and the way that they operate, that it's important that that's working correctly.
One of the things you said at the beginning of that really stuck with me, that 90% go unreported. So that means that without someone like Vyopta, 9 out of 10 of your bad calls, they're just going to be bad calls. They'll never get fixed. No one will say anything. They'll just suffer through it. And whether, the deal doesn't happen because it was a bad call, or just everyone's more tired at the end of the call, or frustrated, the work doesn't get done, nothing will get fixed and nothing will get changed unless there's, and I guess it has to be something not human. It has to be a system that finds these errors that people will just suffer through and not complain about. So I've always, and I've peeked at this once in a while, but I think a lot of people when they think of Vyopta, or they've, they read a few articles about Vyopta, they get the importance of analytics. They understand what you guys do. You connect to all of our systems, and you get all this data, and you present it to us in a way that helps us, fix our problems, and even redesign our workspaces so that things are more efficient. But what do I actually get? Let's say I'm an enterprise. I have 10,000 workers all over the world, and I sign up for Vyopta. Do I get like weekly reports? Is it some sort of dashboard thing? Would I get graphs and charts? Do I get a person who helps me? How do I, what form does all this information take when it comes to me?
Yeah, so it's a cloud platform. So just like Salesforce.com or any other SaaS solution, there's a portal you log into, and you're able to see all of the monitoring analytics within that portal. And so on the monitoring side, we are in real time or near real time, updating all of the data in there about what's going on across the environment. Where are the issues located? Where are you having outages? You're able to see that in real time from that particular portal. I mean, today, if you look at a lot of large organizations, quite often there are 10, 20,000 concurrent calls or meetings going on simultaneously. And so we're taking all of that data, updating it into monitoring, and then through our engine, really surfacing the things that are most important to go look at. Really helping identify where across maybe 15,000 calls that are going on simultaneously, you've got an issue, or you've got an issue with 100 calls, and those are the things that you need to go address. Similarly, in the analytics side, that's where we've got that longer historical view. It's not just what's going on right now or within the last few hours or last few days. It's, okay, what do those trends look like over a long period of time, 1, 2, or more years, so that you can look at things like some of the things you mentioned earlier, like what does adoption look like? Or are there some, kind of underlying systemic issues that, on a 1-day window or 2-day window or 30-day window, you're not seeing, but if you look at 2 years of data, you can start to see some trends that appear. Or, from a workspace perspective, how do we optimize the technology and the spaces we're creating in the office? So what's actually being used and what isn't being used? So the next time we do an office refresh, or we're looking at leasing additional space, or reconfiguring our existing space, you have the data that you need. We haven't touched a lot on workspace insights, but as organizations look at going back to the office, a lot of times, people still use rules like for X number of square footage, you need X number of huddle rooms, and X number of board rooms, and so on and so forth. With Vyopta, we're actually providing the data saying this is what was used. So we've got a lot of customers that have been customers for a number of years, and they can go back in the data and say, okay, this is what usage looked like pre-pandemic. This is what has happened during the pandemic. And they can start to use the data and analytics in there to go, this is what we need to do as we return to the office. And by the way, it's not just looking at that once. We can continue to monitor that and look at how that changes so we can optimize our real estate, the technology that we're purchasing for the business, and driving those returns. And so, something you said earlier, it's, a lot of people think of that side of Vyopta. It's like, how are we helping the business, ultimately maximize their return on investment? But it's really two pieces. It's how do we help the business, but at the same time, it's how do we help those end users of the technology get the most out of that and have the best experience. That's really important because many of us are spending 20+% of our day on calls and meetings.
Yep, and we need to be doing it in a way that works for our workflow, that we can get work done, that it doesn't seem like a disruption from our work. I really appreciate the long-term trends in analytics. I think a lot of times when we purchase things for our employees, we go to a trade show, we go to InfoComm or Enterprise Connect, we see an amazing demo of a new fancy whiteboard or a new camera or a new headset or something, and we say, oh, this is so cool, my team is going to love this. I buy $1 million worth of the stuff, and then later we find out there's nothing wrong with the product, but it's just not the way our team works. I think a better way to start wouldn't be starting with, this is an amazing product, let's get it for a team, and start with the data. This is how our team works. For the last 6 years, they've been shifting. They've been doing a lot more audio calls than video calls. For some reason, the kind of work they do, they prefer to do audio or whatever, or the reverse. As let's do video, I usually go about the reverse. Or they're doing, more, evening calls and morning calls. We need different lighting. I mean, if you know what your team is doing, I think that big $1 million purchase is a lot more safe. And I don't think a lot of, there's not a lot of ways to get those analytics.
It varies within an organization by team. The development team and the sales team are probably working very different in your organization. In fact, the data would suggest they are. And quite often they can be using different technologies. They're using spaces differently. And so if you're applying the same, kind of rules of thumb to both spaces, you're going to end up investing in the, not in the most efficient way.
Now, when we're tracking down a problem, I mean, let's say my audio all of a sudden starts sounding bad to you. It could be my microphone, my PC, the software on my PC, AT&T's bandwidth, Zoom servers, because we're on Zoom right now, your bandwidth, if you're on Verizon or something else, your PC and your headphone. So I guess the best way to catch it is if you're monitoring those things individually, you see the problem before we hear it. It's not a matter of, uh-oh, it sounds bad. What is it? Let's check 10 things now. I guess it has to be proactive. There's no other way to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a relatively simple use case when you start looking at, some of the more complex ones where you're introducing interop and edge and, a bunch of the other components in there. I mean, there can easily be 10 different places where that call or meeting went through between the two individuals. And that's why it's important to be monitoring each of those. And then what we do is we actually merge that data together to show, hey, we've got this single call. Here are all the different components. And we've got one place to see all of that information. Unfortunately,
interop's gotten a lot better. When I first came into this industry, interop was the hottest topic because you can get a video call between a Polycom and a Tamberg, back when Tamberg was a thing, to work half the time. And Polycom would say, well, we're using standard protocols, but they're not. And Tamberg would say, no, we're using standard protocols and they're not. Luckily, things mostly work together now, but there's still, interop is still, there's still issues.
I mean, both. Microsoft uses MSIP, and so if you're using a SIP endpoint and you're connecting that to Microsoft Teams, you're going to need interop. I mean, similarly with Google Meet, if you're connecting to a SIP endpoint, you're also going to need an interop provider. So, and I know vendors are continuing to work on being, more working together more closely and more tightly, but interop is still a big piece of a lot of environments, especially given that they're becoming increasingly multi-vendor, where, as I mentioned before, one team might be using Microsoft Teams, one team might be using Zoom, one team might be using Slack, all within the same company. And they're trying to communicate across these platforms. And especially when they're in the office and they also got SIP endpoints, the interop it can become a major factor in making sure everything talks and works together.
Yeah, we used to say just, what was the expression we used? We used to say, don't go best of breed. Don't say, this is the headset I like, this is the server I like, this is the software I like, because it's not all going to work together. Get everything from, Cisco. Cisco does everything, just get everything from Cisco and you'll be set. And now we say, no, get best of breed. If you like Cisco server, get Cisco server. And if you like Zoom service, use Zoom service. And if you like Logitech headsets, use Logitech headsets. Mix it up. And for the most part, it's working for people. But it is something we have to keep an eye on. I mean, there will always be some problems there.
It works great for the end user. It definitely creates some complications for the IT. And that's actually a place Vyopta really helps out, is that we don't give a single vendor view. I mean, we're not just looking at Cisco or Microsoft, which are both vendors we work with a lot. We're looking across, almost all of the major players in the UC&C space. So, whether that's Cisco, Microsoft, BlueJeans, Zoom, Logitech, so on and so forth. We're pulling all that data together in one place. And so even though your organization might be using 5 tools, you've got one tool to actually manage and monitor all of that.
Yeah, that's for people who want to understand Vyopta in one shot, go to the Vyopta website and look at the logo splash of all the services that they support. Because for me, that's really shows the strength, because some of these services have their own dashboard. BlueJeans has I forget which ones call it a dashboard and which ones call it a hub and whatever. But Zoom, Microsoft, they all have something that shows their usage and whatever. But not all of them do. And even if you do like them, you don't want to have to run 10 dashboards. I don't want a dashboard for my audio service, a dashboard for my chat, a dashboard for Zoom, a dashboard for this, a dashboard for that. I want one dashboard with all of it. So just the fact that you work with so many companies and they're all the names that we're looking for, those are the companies we're working with. Microsoft Teams. I mean, come on. I think that's what clicks in my mind when I think, oh, here's the strength. This is what Vyopta does for me. So let's move on to I have 2 topics I wanted to discuss with you. One was what I think we've done up to now, which was kind of traditional. What's Vyopta do and how does it help us? And the second, I want to talk about how things have changed. So let's switch our scenes here. Let's go to our pub, and things have changed. It used to be that I would say, hey, let's go out to a real pub and have a drink and hang out. But I'm in South Florida and I'm kind of scared right now. We're not doing this. So we're doing things different. We're doing virtual, hanging out at a pub, just like we do this whole podcast virtually. And A lot of our in-person events are going to have at least a virtual element if they don't go totally virtual. I think some of them are still up in the air. Everything's changed. So I would think that before the pandemic, 90 whatever 90% or a very large percent of what you would do would have been stuff at the office. I commute, I go to the office, and then I enter all the things that Vyopta is managing for me. But if everyone's working for at home, was your software just ready to do this? Was it just the same kind of stuff you were monitoring, but now it's on a different PC? PC at the office doesn't matter, PC at home? Or did you guys have to make a shift? Because if we still need all this data, but it's completely different workflow. What happened?
Absolutely. So we were very fortunate that we had the platform. We had the platform that could support both, whether or not it is someone working in an office or working at home. However, we invested very deeply over the last 12 months in specifically the at-home use case. I mean, if you look back 2 years ago, you're right. The majority of what we did was focused on what was going on in the office. A lot of it was, whether it was UCAS or something, actually hosted in the server room, it was really around the quality of experience of, the boardrooms, the huddle rooms, those particular spaces, individuals that may be using some of that technology from their desk. Today, the majority is very much focused on, people that are using that technology from home. Now, especially in some industries, there still are people in the office. There have been the entire time. People, in certain geographies have been returning to the office, although we've seen a bit of a retreat in that over the last couple of weeks as things have changed. But we had the platform, and then we just built additional drivers and capabilities that allowed us to get additional insights to really help those end users. So, being able to look at things like CPU utilization, on a laptop, is that the cause of an issue, or link speed on a home network? So we can help both the end user and the IT department that's supporting them quickly address those issues, so that they don't consistently over and over and over have a bad experience. Quite often we look at, the individuals that are having bad experiences. Yes, there are those one-off issues, but a lot of it is, that same user continually has those bad issues. And so one of the things we encourage our clients to do with our tool is, on a regular basis, run a report. Who are the users that are having the most bad call experiences? And, proactively reach out to them, using the data that's in Vyopta to solve those issues.
I like that, because otherwise it's just, whenever Fred shows up for the call, we can't see him. His video is just bad, and people just live with it and accept it.
Everybody has that person in the office. I know we do. That one person in the office that, every time you're on a call with them, it's a little bit hard. You're saying, pardon me, and you're trying to repeat things. And, I think there's a great opportunity there to help those individuals, if possible, improve it. Sometimes it is things out of their control, like it has to do with their internet service provider or something along those lines. That is one of the challenges in IT these days. They don't control everything end to end because so much of it is outside of the office, and ultimately in the employee or the consumer's hands to make some of those purchasing decisions. So, but having that data, having that information, being able to have that conversation is really important.
Yeah, because from that person's perspective, all of their calls are bad. So they just think this collaboration stuff is no good. They just think, oh, I don't like that Microsoft Teams, Zoom stuff. It's no good for me. It's always bad. I always have a bad call. And if you could say to them, it's not the servers, it's you. You need a new laptop. We'll help you out with that. That could really change, because otherwise they just live with it. And it's not just a matter of, yeah, it's annoying. It affects productivity. It affects your bottom line. You get less work done.
And especially if that individual is one of the decision makers that, or an executive in the organization that's responsible or has a say in what technology is being used. I mean, I get a somewhat funny example of where, someone was getting a lot of complaints around quality, and we were seeing the bad quality within Vyopta. And they insisted that, yes, they had plugged in their laptop. Well, yes, they had plugged in their laptop, but they forgot to plug it into the router. And so from their perspective is, they had done everything right, but they hadn't realized that there was still that issue that was causing that bad quality experience. And in that particular space, IT can come alongside them and help them and say, I'm still not seeing it. Can you check the other end, or things along those lines?
That's really funny. And I totally believe that kind of stuff happens all the time. And they blame the service. Even afterwards, oh yeah, I had a wire that wasn't connected, but still. So another question, are we looking for a different kind of data? And some people might not like this, but I'm thinking if I was a boss, that a boss that was used to having people at the office, I know they're working because I see their butts in the chairs 8 hours a day, and I'm comfortable with that. Now I don't see where their butts are. I don't know. I don't know if they're walking the dog or if they're sitting there typing at their desks or whatever. And I think for most part, we've proven ourselves over the last year. Productivity has increased. It hasn't decreased during the pandemic, which is amazing. A lot of bosses, a lot of big bosses are saying, I'm okay with you staying home and working if you keep working this hard. I'm totally cool with that. But there are some bosses who still might be like, I'm not convinced. Can they be monitoring how often systems are, how often my employees have Slack open? My employees are on Slack all day. They're working. I know they're working. How often they're on video? Are they meeting with their video teams as much as they were when they were in the office? It sounds a little big brothery, but can we use this to see how much our teams are working?
That's not one of the primary use cases, with Vyopta to look at kind of an individual level. Is this person working? How many calls is this person having, or anything really along those lines? Now, that data is in Vyopta. So if you wanted to go and look at the data sets, you could go see some of those trends. But where we have helped organizations is at a higher level, looking at things like employee engagement, at a department level within the organization. Has that changed trends over time? Some important things that we've helped clients with is, think about your sales team. During the pandemic, during this transition, what does the call volume look like? What does the meeting volume look like? Has it gone up? Has it gone down? Internal versus external? Some of those different factors. And so those are ways we've helped organizations. And so we're not an employee monitoring solution. That's not what we're designed to do, but we do have some of the data and analytics that can help, especially some leading indicators across the organization around, how is the team functioning? Are employees still engaged?
Okay, so more big picture stuff. Like we might be able to say, our Chicago team is using our collaboration tools 17% more than our New York team, and they're 17% more profitable. So New York team, you need to step it up.
Absolutely.
And that is real world stuff. I've heard that from enterprises who have said, we've been monitoring our teams and we know that teams that use certain collaboration tools are more productive. They're making more money for us. So it seems like a nice to have. Oh, it'd be nice to know what's going on with my UC environment, but it really isn't a nice to have. It's a bottom line thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely, you need to have those gauges. It'd be like driving a car without gauges. The car still may run, it might go, but you really need to understand, depending on whether you're driving a stick or a manual, you know your speed. You maybe need to know what your TAC is at. You're gonna need to know your odometer. You're gonna need to know all of that information.
That's a great analogy. For the video gamers out there, when you're playing a video game, you're always looking at the mini map. That's where all the data is in the mini map, right? And when you're driving, you're always looking. Well, not always looking, but you're looking down at your gauges. I love that. That's a great analogy. So it's a Friday. We have our cocktails. Let's wrap it up here. Anything else we'd like to share with our viewers and our repeat viewers? This video is going to be up on YouTube to share. Anything that anyone who's kind of curious and clicking on this saying, oh, I've heard about Vyopta. Well, let's see what's going on with them. Anything that they should know?
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to visit our website and reach out. We're happy to have a conversation with you around Vyopta and some of the things that we offer and how we could help your business. Whether it is simplifying the troubleshooting of issues around UC quality of experience, or whether it's helping your organization with planning. We can help you with the data to look at how to maximize the ROI from your investments, whether that be in collaboration technology or spaces.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining me on a Friday afternoon. It's 1:30. Can we call it a day? I think I have to do a little bit more work. A little bit more work today. A little bit more, but then we'll call it a day.
3 o'clock somewhere, but not here quite yet.
Not yet. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me, and thanks to the team at Vyopta for help setting this up. And thanks everyone for watching. Have a great weekend.
All right. Sounds good.